One of the workers told the boss that the diver had been called away on an urgent matter. The boss grimaced. There was no time to waste. He looked around at everyone and said that he would pay 20,000 yuan to the person who went down the well. There was drilling mud at the bottom. It was dangerous to go in there. The workers looked at each other. No one dared. But there was one brave man. It was Yu Xiaobei. He confidently said that he was ready to go down. They quickly began to prepare him. A diving suit was put on. A lifting cable was fastened. The boss looked at him in disbelief, asked if he really thought he could do the job with such a frail body. Yu Xiaobei calmly replied that money would not earn itself. It had been a long time, but the boy still didn't show up. Some people started to get nervous. Others laughed, saying he was faking it. Suddenly, the communications console went offline. One of the workers stood up abruptly and shouted to get him out immediately. After a couple of minutes, Yu Xiaobei was lifted up on a cable. Everyone crowded around, not knowing what to expect. After surfacing from the water, Yu Xiaobei was the first thing Yu Xiaobei reminded about the money. When they took off his diving suit, his boss immediately gave him what he'd promised. He said he didn't think he was the kind of man who valued money more than his life. But Xiaobei had a reason. He's only 18 and he's working to pay for his younger sister's medical treatment. He looked at the money and sighed. He wished he could make money like that every day. After such a heavy load, his nose was bleeding again. Before he could catch his breath, a stranger, wearing a hoodie and black cap, appeared right in front of him. He was the first to speak. He asked if he was really risking his life for pennies. Xiaobei awkwardly replied that he wouldn't do that if he didn't need the money. The stranger calmly said he could offer a chance to get rich. All you have to do is play one game. And he added that it was even safer than his current job. But the stranger himself was suspicious. Xiaobei immediately thought that he was just another con artist. Xiaobei walked past the stranger and calmly said that he was not interested in such offers. As he approached the building, he pulled out his phone and texted his sister that he had bought a treat for her. In the hallway of the hospital, he happened to run into Dr. Li, the one who was treating Xiaoxi. The doctor's gaze immediately fell on Xiaobei's old hoodie and his tired look. He stopped the guy with a gesture and told him to stay back. Then he coldly asked if this month's treatment had been paid for. The doctor said Xiaoxi's condition is getting worse. A transplant is needed as soon as possible. But he said Xiaobei is unlikely to have the money, so it's worth preparing for the worst. Xiaobei lowered his head and quietly said that he would find the money. The doctor snorted and threw back, "It's only a few 100,000 yuan needed." Behind the wall all this time stood the stranger in black. He heard every word. Xiaobei entered his sister's room. While she was sleeping peacefully, he stood beside her, unable to get one question out of his mind: where to get such a sum of money? He knew there wasn't much time left. Xiaobei sat in silence. It was frustrating. He worked non-stop, but he still couldn't raise the amount of money he needed. It was his sister's life that was at stake. He dialed his father's number. He hoped to the end that he would help, but as always, he heard no. Father said that even if you get the money, it still won't change anything. He doesn't believe Xiaoxi will recover. Then he added that if she dies, there will be some money to be made from her death. He also said that Xiaobei could finally live a normal life, and he promised to give his sister a beautiful funeral. Xiaobei snapped, told his father everything he thought. He asked if he was even human, reminded him that he wasn't enough of a gambler, and that he wouldn't let Xiaoxi get hurt. Before Xiaobei hung up the phone, his father threw back a single word: bastard. The boy exhaled heavily. It was empty, but a little easier on his soul. He had no one else to rely on. He looked up and noticed a familiar figure. At the end of the hallway stood the same guy in black. He was watching him again. The stranger calmly stepped forward and waved his hand, greeting Xiaobei. Xiaobei was finally tired of this type of person constantly appearing around him. He abruptly moved forward, determined to deal with it once and for all. As he got closer, he spoke sharply. He said that if he didn't leave him alone, he would call the police. But the stranger calmly replied that he was misunderstood. He extended his hand and said that he had been looking for Xiaobei all this time to offer to play a game. Pointing out the window to the streets of the city, he added, if Xiaobei could catch him on one of the 3 streets in 5 minutes, there would be a reward waiting for him. The prize is 100,000 yuan. Xiaobei became furious. He shouted that this guy was definitely crazy if he thought he would fall for such nonsense. But at that moment, he happened to notice the logo on his hoodie. The symbol seemed strangely familiar. The hooded guy snapped his fingers, and right after that, he calmly said that the 20,000 deposit had already been deposited into Xiaobei's account. Then he repeated that if he caught him in 5 minutes, he would get the rest. Xiaobei decided that this was some kind of stupid prank, but then I heard a notification come through on my phone. He glanced at the screen. 20,000 had actually dripped into the account. The guy tensed up. He immediately asked several questions: who he was, how he knew the card number, And what would happen if he just refused? The stranger answered only the last one. He could keep the deposit. Xiao Bei was silent for a second. Then he nodded. He accepts the challenge. But he wanted to clarify one thing. Only the stranger didn't let him finish. He said the countdown was on and the game had already begun. After that, he just jumped out the window. Xiao Bei ran to the edge and saw him get to his feet and run on as if he hadn't fallen at all. Not even a scratch. He was shocked. It looked crazy, but Xiao Bei was fired up. He wasn't going to lose. He pushed himself off the railing and raced down the stairs at full speed. Xiao Bei ran out of the hospital and quickly headed towards one of the streets that were indicated. Soon he spotted the silhouette of a hooded guy in the alley and immediately rushed after him. He realized that he couldn't catch up with him because he was too far away. But Xiao Bei had an advantage. He knew the neighborhood well because he often visited his sister. Using his knowledge of the path, Xiao Bei shortened the distance. The hooded guy grabbed the railing, and after a moment jumped over them so as not to waste time on the stairs. Passers-by stopped and looked at Xiao Bei perplexedly, shouting something to him. But Xiao Bei didn't pay attention. He was breathing heavily and his body was covered in sweat, but the excitement did not let go. When it was necessary to climb the stairs, he spread his legs sharply and moved quickly upward. Xiao Bei traversed a few steps and almost caught up with the guy in black. The distance between them was narrowing. The third minute was almost over, and Xiao Bei was almost there. But the next moment, the hooded guy simply disappeared. Xiao Bei noticed that every time he almost caught up with him, he instantly disappeared. Xiao Bei thought it was just a game, but he was very wrong. He was tired, and that guy looked like he had just started. Looking at the phone screen, Xiao Bei realized that there was almost no time left. He realized that he wouldn't be able to win. He tore up to the roof. It was his last chance. Despite being tired, Xiao Bei kept running, trying not to lose his breath or stop. A couple seconds later, he was on the edge of the roof. He froze, startled. The height was eerie. But from the roof, he could see where the guy was standing. Xiao Bei thought that if he jumped, he would catch up with him. But this height, he doubted whether he would survive after such a jump. With only 6 seconds to go, Xiao Bei realized that now was not the time to be afraid. Everything he did was for his sister's sake. He jumped sharply from the edge of the roof. His scream burst out on its own. The fear was overwhelming, but it was no longer to him. He was falling at breakneck speed, right towards where the guy in black was standing. The guy in black thought he was wrong again. An ordinary man, unable to catch up with him. The timer was showing 1 second, and he was sure he had won. But that last second changed everything. Xiao Bei rushed down, parkouring, bouncing off the walls, all to somehow cushion his fall. Upon landing, he immediately tore toward the stranger. The guy in black didn't even see it coming. Xiao Bei, dropping to one knee, said loudly, "Caught up!" Xiao Bei took a small breath. He was on edge. 5 minutes of chasing had taken all his strength. At this moment, his phone received a notification of an 80,000 yuan transfer. The hooded guy congratulated Xiao Bei on winning, and then offered even more. He said the next games would be with even more money. Xiao Bei didn't even hesitate as he replied. He was ready to continue. And that's when he noticed it. The metallic face of a stranger. It wasn't human. When Xiao Bei realized who was in front of him, he opened his mouth in horror and cried out. The robot took out a bracelet and began to put it on Xiao Bei's arm while looking at him with glowing eyes. As soon as the bracelet was on his arm, the robot announced that the scanning of the player's identity had begun, and a couple seconds later, it confirmed that Xiao Bei had passed the test. Xiao Bei felt an eerie headache and his eyes began to roll. A moment later, he lost consciousness. Xiao Bei collapsed without strength right in front of the mysterious stranger. A little time passed and Xiao Bei began to come to his senses. When the guy opened his eyes fully, he saw dead people lying around in pools of blood. In the next second, a timer appeared in front of my eyes, and a mission message sounded in my head. You have to survive for 5 minutes. Xiao Bei looked around and tried to figure out where he was. In the darkness, he spotted monsters with burning red eyes and sharp fangs. While he was trying to come to his senses, the message came through again. The game was about to start. Everyone should get ready. The voice gave 5 seconds to prepare. Xiao Bei rose to his feet. His head hurt terribly. The last thing he remembered was the man putting a strange bracelet on him. His pupils narrowed as he saw the gruesome picture. The 2 child monsters were chewing on the body of a human. Looking at this, Xiao Bei couldn't understand where he had gotten to. When the voice counted down second, sweat ran down his face. He felt that something was obviously wrong. At the first second, a voice announced, the game of survival had begun. Hearing this, the children smirked. They abruptly snapped out of their seats and ran towards Xiao Bei. He still didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could clearly sense that these 2 men wanted to kill him. In a panic, he exhaled, "I'm definitely not going to survive here." Leaning forward slightly, he stretched his arms back and ran. First thing I did was look around. Knowing the terrain is a chance to survive. He remembered what the voice had said. You only had to hold out for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. But now it seemed like an eternity. Xiaobei noticed that one of the children had disappeared. He shifted his gaze forward. The child was already right in front of him. The creature opened its mouth, exposing sharp teeth, and swung at Xiaobei. In a leap, the monster slammed into her shoulder, leaving an open wound and tearing her sweater. A second claw swiped at the same spot, reinforcing the wound and tearing his clothes even more. Xiaobei looked at their hands. The claws were frighteningly long. Squeezing his shoulder, he muttered quietly, "They work in pairs." But even after realizing this, one question remained open. What to do now? He wiped the sweat from his forehead. It wasn't much, but the exertion was as exhausting as a marathon. Xiaobei glanced at the timer and turned cold. Not even half the time had passed. As he ran to the huge timer, the kids sprang into action. One put up his hands, the other stood on them. In the next second, the child with red earrings flew into the air as if it had been shot from a catapult and flew straight towards Xiaobei. Xiaobei only had time to turn around before he was hit. The baby monster was already at his back. It extended its claws and aimed straight for his back. In an instant, sharp claws stabbed deep into Xiaobei's body. Blood rushed out from the wound. It came out of his mouth as well. The creature opened its mouth, preparing to bite. But Xiaobei wasn't going to just die like this. He grabbed the monster sitting on his shoulders, and in a couple seconds threw him up. After panting, Xiaobei wiped his sweat and shook off the scraps of cloth from his face. "Damn, that was painful," he whispered. There were only 2 minutes left until the end. The thought of having so little left gave Xiaobei the strength to fight. Leaving the children behind, he rushed forward with all his might. One of the monsters caught up to him and grabbed his arm, hooking into his fingers. The creature broke its ring finger and began to tear off its pinky. Xiaobei cried out in wild pain. Tears flowed down his cheeks by themselves. My fingers swelled and turned red. But even through the pain, he lifted his head. He couldn't die here. Hope still burned inside. At that moment, he heard a voice. "Warning. The heart rate is 180 beats per minute. This is dangerous. It is recommended to stop physical activity." My heart was beating faster and faster. When the meter reached 200, Xiaobei felt like he was suffocating. He simply couldn't breathe in. There was exactly 1 minute left until the end of the game. Xiaobei's mind flashed back to Xiaoxi. He thought, what will happen to her if I die? There's no one to protect her. Only him. At that moment, a new notification appeared in front of him. Access to the system had been unlocked. Right after that, another one popped up. Activate the skill Reverse. In a second, all the wounds were gone. The pain was gone. Xiaobei felt strong again. The notification confirmed. His physical state was completely restored. He looked up and saw that the system had revealed the details of the reversal skill. It had one condition. Only activates at 200 beats per minute. Recharges in 10 minutes. The effect is to anticipate the enemy's movements 3 seconds ahead. The clue said, using the skill would increase the chance of passing the level. This made Xiaobei think for a moment. There was no other choice anyway. He decided to use it. In the final seconds, he activated Reverse, and the enemy's movements began to appear in front of his eyes before they even happened. With the skill, Xiaobei saw the monster children about to attack at the same time. He was in shock. This ability is just crazy. From what he saw, he realized, the girl on his right was going to jump on his shoulder and bite him. The boy on the left was aiming straight for the heart. Xiaobei realized that he had to change this outcome. He crouched sharply and deftly dodged their attack. The monsters, not expecting such a thing, flew past and collapsed headfirst. Xiaobei exhaled heavily. There were only 10 seconds left until the end, but the girl jumped at him again. He barely had time to react. He was too absorbed in his thoughts. In a panic, he thought about using Reverse again, but forgot. The skill was still on cooldown. The girl knocked him down. There were only 2 seconds left. Standing on his knee, she slowly brought her claws up to his eyes. Soon the tall door slowly began to open. Xiaobei came out of it. He was deep in thought. He clearly realized that without the skill, he wouldn't have lived anymore. There were so many questions swirling around in my head. Where does this path lead? Is this the bonus game the weird guy was talking about? And these kids? Are they no longer human? A notice popped up in front of my eyes. Reward, 300 points. He looked ahead and noticed another door. Opening it, Xiaobei froze in surprise. There were other players in the room. One of the players said he heard. 20 newcomers came in today. When he saw that only one person had come out of the building, he laughed loudly. He assumed that the others simply hadn't survived. Xiaobei looked at the other players and couldn't understand why they were all so stiff. Suddenly, he felt someone's touch on his shoulder. The dreadlocked guy grinned and said that the first game must have been exciting. Xiaobei looked at him in surprise, waiting for an answer. The guy introduced himself as Jiang Ye and said that he had been here for half a month. He turned out to be a player too. Xiaobei wondered if all these people around were really the same kind of players. He wondered why they were brought here in the first place. Zhang Ye grinned again and suggested that we talk in a quieter place. When the two of them were left alone, Xiaobei asked if he too had passed the 5-minute test. And then what kind of place it was. Zhang Ye replied, "This is the arena. This is where the survival games are played." He then asked if Xiaobei knew about the Time Consortium. Xiaobei hadn't heard anything about it. Then Zhang Ye explained, "It's a powerful technology company with branches all over the world. They say they will soon buy up half of the planet." Xiaobei immediately remembered the logo on that mysterious person's clothes, but still didn't understand what this company had to do with what was happening. Zhang Ye grinned and pointed at the bracelet on Xiaobei's arm. He touched the letter icon on the touchscreen. A blue beam flew out from the bracelet, rushing upwards. A second later, a hologram appeared in the air. She greeted Yu Xiaobei and informed him that the only way to survive in the arena was to keep playing. Waving his arms around, the hologram explained that for every game he played, he would get points to help pump up the level. To win, Xiaobei must become the last surviving player. Only then can he inherit the Time Company and all its assets. But there are rules to break, and it's deadly to break them. The hologram disappeared, saying lastly that all the detailed information could be found in the beginner's guide, right in the bracelet. Xiaobei couldn't believe that it was about such a huge amount of money. He asked Zhang Ye if he really thought the winner would get a lot of dough. Zhang Ye nodded and said that there was a chance, but he added that it was almost impossible to become the last player. Zhang Ye explained that there were 7 ranks in this game. Right now, they are at the lowest one, Tongsheng. He stood up and said that if Xiaobei wanted to get a huge fortune, he would have to play on and gain points to level up. But with each level, the game gets more dangerous. Walking over to the food vending machine, Zhang Ye added that points were not just numbers. Here they replace money. If you want to eat or drink water, pay with points. And it's all strictly limited. He jabbed his finger at the empty vending machine. There were no cookies or water left. Turning around, Zhang Ye warned, "Everything is sold out." Then he added seriously, "If you spend all your points and go to 0, there's instant execution." Xiaobei tensed up. The reward sounded tempting, but he had barely survived the first game. Also, Xiao Shi is in the hospital. He just doesn't have time for all this. Xiaobei wanted to know if it was possible to just opt out. But suddenly someone in the crowd shouted. A guy with disheveled hair snapped. He shouted that he was starving every day, enduring monsters, and couldn't take it anymore. He yanked his bracelet and shouted that he wanted to leave. A steady mechanical voice came from the bracelet. It demanded that he remain calm. A moment later, the guy exploded in a bloody fountain. Xiaobei froze. His pupils narrowed in fear. Zhang Ye said that in this place, you can't just say no. If you want to live, you have to play. There is no other way out. Xiaobei lowered his gaze. He wondered if the guy was really out. Zhang Ye added that it all depends on strength. If you are weak, you won't last long. Xiaobei looked at him suspiciously and asked why he was even talking to him. What was he, an ordinary rookie, so interesting about? Zhang Ye replied that it never hurts to meet those who can become strong. He saw Xiaobei go through the game. At first he thought he was weak, but when he dodged the monster's attacks, he realized he was wrong. Zhang Ye remembered how in the last seconds of the game, the monster had almost struck but not in time. He said that Xiaobei was eerily lucky. Xiaobei suddenly realized. It was that strange system that had saved him at the very last moment. He wanted to know more about her, but when Xiaobei mentioned the system, Zhang Ye stared at him incomprehensibly. At that time, Xiaobei awkwardly averted his gaze. He realized that Zhang Ye had watched the broadcast but didn't know anything about the system. It seems like this system is only seen by him. Xiaobei decided not to tell anyone about it for now. Suddenly, a mechanical voice came from the speakers. It reminded him that there were 30 minutes until the public area closed. The voice also warned, whoever did not return to their room before closing time would be executed. Zhang Ye explained that the zone was open from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. All the rest of the time you have to be in the dormitory. He invited Xiaobei to come with him to the cell. He agreed without hesitation. The boys walked toward the dormitory. Xiaobei quietly said that since it was impossible to leave this place, then we must survive somehow. Zhang Ye fixed his bandana and looked at him. You're calmer than I thought. He added that he himself came to his senses for 3 days before coming to terms with what was happening. Xiaobei and Zhang Ye reached cell number B24. Zhang Ye was surprised to hear the number. Zhang Ye said he lived in B10, right below him, which made him a little happy. A message came over the speakerphone. The system announced that there were 5 minutes left until the public area was closed. Zhang Ye said that he had to go back, but if they crossed paths tomorrow, he would definitely show Xiaobei the area. After that, he quickly left. Xiaobei felt relieved. At least someone here was normal. Thanks to Zhang Ye's information, he already felt more confident. As he approached the door of his cell, he wondered if this was now his home. He opened the door and immediately saw 4 menacing-looking guys in the room. One of them, without getting up, cast a glance and said that the newcomer's place was by the toilet. The others silently supported him with a look. At night, everyone lay down on the floor. Xiaobei lay in silence. The thoughts of his sister did not let him go for a second. He looked at the bracelet. It was urgent to understand how the world worked. First, he had to understand the rules. He opened the interface and found a section called Beginner's Guide. Without hesitation, he clicked on it. As soon as Xiaobei pressed the button, a blue light burst out from the bracelet. A translucent system window hovered in front of him. A cartoon character with a wide smile appeared on the screen. He introduced himself as Star and greeted the player. Star reported that after the first game, participants begin earning personal points. He explained that every day at midnight, 100 points would be deducted from the balance, a fee to stay in the arena. If the score is 0, the player forfeits his right to survive and is subject to elimination. Star said that Xiaobei's level right now is Tongsheng. To rise to the next one, Shuzai, you need to accumulate 10,000 points and defeat the boss. Xiaobei exhaled heavily. He remembered that he had only gotten 300 points in the first game. At this rate, the path to the next level seemed endless. Star continued to narrate. He said that in each game, the arena would release different monsters for the players to fight. He also explained that there are 3 levels of difficulty: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Everything depends on time, place, rules, and number of participants. The standard level gives 300 points for winning. The harder the game, the higher the reward. Finally, Star added, if a player does not participate in at least 1 game per day, he will be disqualified. To avoid this, a penalty of 300 points can be paid. Remembering how his fingers were broken, Xiaobei felt a chill in his stomach. He would have to face these monsters every day now. He raised his head, his eyes becoming hard. If he wanted to survive, he had to get stronger and win every round. Suddenly, a notification popped up in front of him. 1 unread message. Xiaobei shuddered. His heart skipped a beat. These pop-ups are always scary. Once in the message, he learned that there was training to improve skills, and points could be earned for completion. Xiaobei couldn't hold back a smile. He thought that it wasn't as bad as it seemed. The next second, he was in a new place. Everything around him was completely unfamiliar. A notice appeared above him. Training simulation activated. Here you can improve your skills without real risk. Xiaobei has launched a training session. You have to survive for 5 minutes. The monsters aren't real, but if you lose 100 points. When the monsters from the first game appeared in front of the guy again, Xiaobei exclaimed, "Are they really them again?" The next morning, everyone reconvened in the public area. Zhang Ye looked around. He wasn't in the dormitory, and he couldn't find Xiaobei in the public area either, even though he had been looking for him for quite some time. He thought that perhaps Xiaobei had already started his training. Zhang Ye muttered quietly. Wasn't he supposed to survive and die afterward? Too bad, I thought he already had 2 strokes. Suddenly, Zhang Ye noticed a silhouette coming out through the large doors. It was Xiaobei. He walked with a confident gait, hiding his face under his hood. Zhang Ye immediately waved his hand in greeting. Xiaobei came in early. He wondered how useful yesterday's training from the system had been. When the simulation started, 2 monsters ran up to him, just like in the real game. Even though the monsters were fake, the fear he felt was real. The simulation was going on, and the monsters quickly caught up with him. Xiaobei thought that maybe it was all because of the intensity of the training. That's why he got caught. The simulation did not complete, and 100 points were deducted from Xiaobei's balance. In addition, the system activated the basic fitness training. Xiaobei looked at the balance and saw that he only had 200 points left. He glanced thoughtfully at the system window, thinking about basic training. Covered in sweat, Xiaobei grinned. He had finally found a way to become stronger. Through training, a new menu appeared on the wristband screen. Learning fixed point jumps, somersaults, and rolling on the ground. Every new movement is difficult for him. He has suffered many failures and falls. But after hours and thousands of failed attempts, Xiaobei still mastered these artificial techniques. When the training session was over, he found himself exhausted, but he suddenly noticed. It had actually only been a few seconds in reality, he wondered, looking at the bracelet. Why was the time here so different from the real time? After the morning game, Xiaobei was confident. Systematic training really helps improve skills. Zhang Ye clapped him on the shoulder and offered to go with him. Xiaobei stopped and asked Zhang Ye to wait. He asked, "Is there only 1 game a day for everyone here? Can I go again?" Zhang Ye shouted that if Xiaobei decided to play again, the difficulty of the game would increase, and it would be too dangerous. The second player standing next to him looked at Xiaobei in bewilderment, not understanding how he had even managed to survive the first time. Xiao Bei was not afraid. He wanted more. With every moment, he was only getting stronger. Moving closer to Yānmiè, Xiao Bei said that if you played one game a day, the points would accumulate too slowly. If you play more, then the progress would be faster. Yānmiè nervously chuckled and replied that Xiao Bei was lucky the first time, but how he would survive the second was a mystery. Xiao Bei, without listening to him, stepped confidently towards the huge door. Stopping at the door, he lifted his head and looked at her thoughtfully. The system at this time notified him, "The difficulty of the next game has been increased." But Xiao Bei was only thinking about whether he should go further. The system urged Xiao Bei to enter the room, warning him that the trial was about to begin. At this moment, Xiao Bei heard a loud shout from one of the players, which caught his attention. The guy clutched at his frame and yelled in pain. You could tell it was really bad. Xiao Bei looked at his condition and thought, wow, if he's twisted like this, then the game is really tough. But then I remembered how yesterday's training had helped me dodge and run with confidence today. It wasn't that hard. Well, since that's the case, even if it gets a little more difficult, it's no big deal, he decided. He's got a serious attitude. We need to give it our best and score as many points as possible. In the next second, Xiao Bei stepped into a new room. The first thing he noticed was that there was a pool in the location. He looked around and marveled. Everything was completely different than before. The location was drastically different from the previous one. Seeing the water and the steam rising from it, Xiao Bei immediately covered his nose with his hand. He glanced at the assignment. Survive in 5 minutes and destroy at least one monster. Xiao Bei abruptly recoiled. He didn't expect that now he would not only have to survive, but also attack. The system has issued a new warning. The difficulty level has increased. Players are ordered to stay away from the sulfuric acid pool. The game had begun. Xiao Bei immediately realized that if you stumble, you're dead. He began to move more carefully. The monster appeared from above so quickly that Xiao Bei barely had time to notice it. He was shocked. Both their speed and appearance had changed. The monster threw sharp claws. Xiao Bei miraculously managed to deflect it. He moved forward sharply, aiming to escape. Without a hitch, he tore off, leaving the monster behind. He trembled with fear but continued to carry on across the narrow bridge. Everything inside clenched. Right now, he was far more frightened by the acid underfoot than any gargoyles. Xiao Bei saw that the road was blocked. Monsters surrounded him from front and back. He'd practiced jumping that distance yesterday, so he should be able to do it. Wasting no time, he pushed off the bridge. I jumped from one narrow lane to another. Fortunately, he stayed on the bridge. There was just under 4 minutes to go. Simply dodging the attacks won't do the trick. Now we have to take out at least one of these assholes ourselves. He's confused. How can he fight when he doesn't even have a weapon? And he's got to keep from falling into the acid. It's too risky. An idea flashed through his mind. The pool of acid could be his weapon. The monsters had already come close and jumped on him. Xiao Bei abruptly stood up on his hands and started swinging his legs, dodging the blows of his claws and teeth. Xiao Bei realized, if he activated the system skill, he could grab the monster and hurl it directly into the acid. But nothing was working. The skill wouldn't activate, his heart rate still low. He kept dodging, moving as if he were breakdancing. Sharp turns, leg swings, body twists. He didn't understand why his heart rate wasn't rising. Maybe it just wasn't as scary as last time. But one thing is certain. If he misses and gets seriously wounded, he won't get out alive. A thought popped into my head. What if the pain could raise my heart rate dramatically? He remembered how back then, during the last game, the skill had saved his life. Now the monster's claws were centimeters away from him. We had to act. Xiao Bei abruptly put up his left arm, covering his chest. The most important thing was not to let the enemy hit his heart. The claws split the skin. Blood spurted from his arm. The pain was worse than he'd expected. His pulse jumped to 180 beats per minute. A couple seconds later, it's 190 beats per minute. Xiao Bei felt his pulse frantically rising. There was almost no time left, so he had to act. One of the monsters jumped above him and prepared to stab him in the back. The other rushed from the side, claws clenched. The numbers on the screen flashed, 195 beats per minute. And right after that, 200. At the same instant, Xiao Bei activated the reverse skill. The world slowed down. He saw the monster from above about to kick him between the shoulder blades to drop him into the acid. Xiao Bei clenched his teeth. If he didn't make it in time, the chance would be lost. The skill only lasts for a couple of seconds. He realized that these monsters like to attack in the face, which means when he dodges, it's the best time to strike back. One of the monsters had already swung, aiming straight for his head, but Xiao Bei ducked sharply as the claws swept past. Xiao Bei knew. To pull it off, he needed to lure the monster to the very edge of the bridge. Grasping the edge with his hands, he lifted his legs sharply and struck the monster squarely in the back with a U-turn. At the same moment, he spun around, hung onto his hands, and kicked the monster like a soccer ball. It flew off and whistled straight into the acid. The monster screamed, but it was too late. The acid had already begun to eat away at his body. He was pulling his paw, as if hoping to be rescued. But no one was going to do that. Xiao Bei was still hovering above the pool, holding onto the bridge with one hand. When he saw the monster being eaten away, he muttered fearfully. If he missed, he would be the next one in the acid. Gathering all the strength in his remaining arm, Xiao Bei pulled himself up and somehow climbed back onto the bridge. He got on all fours, coughing. His left arm was covered in blood. With a quick glance at the timer, he saw there were still 2 minutes left. Xiao Bei tensed up. His wound was bleeding profusely, and he was beginning to doubt whether he could even last to the end. Xiao Bei clenched his teeth. His head was dizzy, and his eyes were blurry. He could feel himself getting weaker. A thought flashed through his mind. Is this really the end? And suddenly, a clue popped up in front of my eyes. The system suggested using points to pump the skill up a level higher. Immediately after the game, a message popped up. The skill Reverse can be pumped. New level, new action time. Cool. The second level gave a powerful upgrade. The skill showed where the enemy would move in the next 5 seconds. It could be triggered at a heart rate of 160, and it took only 8 minutes to recharge. But the cost of this pleasure was 300 points. Xiao Bei tensed up. Yesterday, the system had already deducted 100 for mission failure, and last night, it had deducted another 100 for the dormitory. He glanced at his wristband. Only 400 points left after today's rink. Expensive, he thought. But to be honest, he couldn't survive without this upgrade. He's barely hanging on as it is. There was no choice. He clicked refresh. The skill has been upgraded to level 2. A new message came out. If he dodges all attacks in those 5 seconds, he gets a speed buff, plus 2 minutes of acceleration. The system immediately gave out a notification. The skill was pumped up, the validity time was updated. It's done. Xiao Bei didn't hesitate. He immediately activated Reverse. This was his last chance, and he knew it. Thanks to his skill, he could see where the monsters were going to strike. The first one came from above, and Xiao Bei ducked sharply. The second one came from the left. He instantly ducked and avoided the blow. There were less than 2 minutes left in the game. He dodged all the attacks, which means the acceleration worked, for exactly 2 minutes. Perfect timing. One of the monsters pulled his hand up again, trying to grab his face. Xiao Bei ducked down sharply. It had missed. He had almost been caught. But at that moment, he felt his body become lighter. Much lighter. He took the starting position like a sprint. In the next instant, Xiao Bei rushed forward at breakneck speed. The monsters were left far behind. Xiao Bei immediately realized, with the acceleration, dodging became many times easier. The guy thought that if he accelerated a little more, the monsters wouldn't even be able to touch him. But then he remembered, the wound is in the way. He can't do his best. There's hardly any time left, just over a minute. Feeling his body become lighter and faster, Xiao Bei realized investing in skills was really worth it, even if it was almost all points. Suddenly, the monster that had been dropped earlier rose from the pool. It roared so loudly that the hall shook. It was only about 40 seconds away from victory. Xiao Bei lingered in place, and that was enough. The monsters jumped up and almost knocked him down. He could barely stay on his feet. He muttered quietly that he should move while the acceleration was working. One of the monsters helped the other to get out onto the bridge. Xiao Bei looked at them and snorted. You guys aren't that scary. The timer blinked. Time's up. Xiao Bei won. He survived to the end and threw one monster into the acid pool. That was enough. System congratulated. Player Yu Xiao Bei has successfully completed the 2-star game. The reward is 500 points. The game is over. Xiao Bei was asked to move to the common area. Without wasting any time, he went straight to the vending machine. He needed to buy medicine urgently. The wound still hurt. It wouldn't heal on its own. Xiao Bei sat down and began to carefully bandage his arm with a bandage. The pain was infernal. My hand was shaking, the bandage almost slipping out of my fingers. At that moment, a notification popped up on my wristband. Double points card available. Use it now to double your reward, for 1 game only. Fortunately, the medicines here were inexpensive. He bought everything he needed for only 20 points. Earlier, Xiao Bei had picked out a first aid kit from the vending machine. It was complete and convenient. Suddenly, his stomach rumbled loudly. He felt terribly hungry. He hadn't eaten anything since the previous day. Looking around, Xiao Bei began to search for Zhang Ye with his gaze. After all, the latter had promised to wait for him. Not waiting, he walked over to the vending machine himself, deciding to buy some food. As he was walking, a few guys noticed him. One brunette looked at him with a wild look. He said with a chuckle that he was the guy from the hallway and wondered how he'd survived, adding that he'd just gotten here and was already acting tough. He then grinned widely and sarcastically remarked that since Xiaobei had gone through 2 games, it meant that he now had a bunch of points. Xiaobei ignored him, walked over to the vending machine and started clicking on the screen, selecting food. The choice was scarce. Pressed cookies were already sold out, only water was left, and the prices were biting, especially considering that for a regular game, you get only 300 points. Xiaobei sighed heavily and realized that it wouldn't be easy to survive here, so he decided to take part in more dangerous games to accumulate points faster. Clutching his stomach, he thought it would be worth coming in early tomorrow so he could grab some food. Suddenly, a voice sounded behind him, and Xiaobei immediately turned around. The same brunette stood in front of him, grinning and showing off packs of cookies, and asked if Xiaobei wanted one, adding that if he kept coming at this time, there would only be hot air here. His friend looked at Xiaobei and said that he looked 18, and when he asked the others how long he would last, everyone laughed. Xiaobei frowned and asked the brunette if he was all right. The one only smiled wider and called Xiaobei too flashy. The brunette chuckled, picked up a packet of cookies and offered to buy it for 400 points. Xiaobei froze, unable to believe his ears. A pack like this cost 80 in the vending machine, and this guy was requesting 5 times that amount. Xiaobei calmly replied that it was too expensive and he wasn't interested. In response, he heard demonstrative sighs and oohs from that trio. Raising his gaze, Xiaobei coldly asked what they needed. The brunette put his hand on his shoulder and said that Xiaobei should buy a cookie if he wanted to leave quietly, explaining that the vending machine didn't have one anyway, and 400 points wasn't much. He then advised Xiaobei to befriend them so that they would have his back. Xiaobei thought for a moment. He had just arrived, and messing with them was definitely not in his best interest, but giving in would also mean giving them an excuse to pry again. Suddenly, the brunette laughed loudly, looked at him with crazy eyes, and said that if Xiaobei didn't buy the cookies, he would have to break his leg. The brunette smiled broadly and said that he had no choice, as Xiaobei was too arrogant, adding that he should learn to bow to the strong, otherwise he wouldn't live here for long. Patting him on the shoulder, he reminded him that the rules of the arena say you can't kill. But he added with an ulcer that a man with a broken arm or leg is unlikely to last in games. One of his cronies chuckled and suggested just sending Xiaobei away, but the brunette didn't back down. With the bracelets, we can trade. Patting Xiaobei on the cheek, he once again repeated the conditions and warned that their patience was running out. Xiaobei quickly assessed the situation. If this guy was alone, he would have already been lying down. But there were 3 of them. At that moment, the brunette extended his arm, showing the bracelet and saying that they matched. Seeing Xiaobei's bracelet labeled Transaction Information Identification, he laughed. With a chuckle, he called Xiaobei a good boy. But before he could say anything, Xiaobei's powerful fist sharply met his cheek. Standing up in a fighting stance, Xiaobei struck him from the side of the face with all his might. The blow was so strong that blood spurted from the brunette's mouth. He cried out in pain and coughed, unable to realize at once what was happening. With one punch plopping him on the floor, Xiaobei calmly said that no points they would get from him. Xiaobei understood. Only those who hold on to the end survive here. Sometimes confidence can affect the others. But if the points are taken away by some lunatics, then the point of playing is lost. Glancing at Xiaobei, the brunette said abruptly, "Doesn't this guy understand? I really want to kill him." The brunette slowly stood up and then shouted at the top of his voice, "Kill him!" His cronies immediately surrounded Xiaobei, aimed at him, and the crowd gathered closer to watch. The blonde-haired guy asked who would win, and his friend replied that it looked like Ao Haiying had his eye on the new guy. Zhang Ye tensed up as he heard the noise of the crowd getting louder and louder. The brunette shouted and tore towards Xiaobei with his fist, and at this moment, he thought that since the system had chosen him, it meant that it didn't want him to hide like a coward. Xiaobei abruptly rushed behind the back of one of the bullies and kicked him in the lower back, roughly, without delay. He understood. Even against a few there was a chance. He glanced at the bracelet and wondered about his heart rate. But the thoughts were interrupted by a guy on the left who abruptly burst out with a punch. This one was really strong. Even with a block with both hands, Xiaobei could feel his strength. The guy noticed the bandage, grabbed Xiaobei's left arm, and mockingly shouted that he seemed to be injured. He deliberately put pressure on the wound and laughed even louder. While Xiaobei was squirming in pain, Ao Haiying pounced on him from behind. Ao Haiying hit him with all his might with a backhanded hook and yelled, "How dare you joke with us!" Xiaobei was thrown backwards from the impact. He flew across the floor and slammed his back into the wall. Ao Haiying looked at him and said, "Bastard, let's see where your arrogance takes you." After that, he ordered his cronies to break Xiaobei's leg. 2 people approached him. One of them, whom Xiaobei remembered as being very strong, began to stretch his arms and asked which leg to break, the right or the left. The pain was as if my body was about to fall apart. but a pulse rate of 152 beats per minute wasn't enough to activate the backlash. Xiao Bei sadly lowered his gaze. He couldn't believe that he could be put down with just one blow. Xiao Bei couldn't give up. Even in this situation, he stood up, determined to fight back. The dark-haired guy smirked. His smile was insane. He said that Xiao Bei had better not try to get up because it was useless, and lifted his leg, aiming his foot at his left knee. When Xiao Bei's heart rate reached 160 beats per minute, he activated the ability. He felt his opponent's leg squeezing his knee, preparing to break it. Xiao Bei moved slightly sideways, dodging a couple of centimeters. This allowed him to activate the acceleration, which would now last for 2 minutes. With incredible speed, he tore forward so that his opponent nearly flew up from the impact. As the dark-haired guy lost his balance and started to fall, Xiao Bei was already by his side, ready to strike back. He slammed his palm sharply into the brunette's face, pinning his head against the wall. Pushed against the wall, the guy frightenedly asked why Xiao Bei had become so fast. He shouted that this couldn't be and shouldn't have happened. Seeing that his comrades were failing, Ao Haiying rushed into battle. Xiao Bei cast a glance at Ao Haiying. He didn't have time to wait for him to come over. His skill was time-limited. When Ao Haiying ran up and struck, his fist missed. Xiao Bei was much faster and easily dodged the punch. Xiao Bei raised his left foot and charged at Ao Haiying's head with force. A strong kick threw Ao Haiying backwards and he slid across the floor. Ao Haiying cried out loudly, realizing that Xiao Bei had just put the three of them down. Xiao Bei walked closer to the main bully and grinned, asking, "What was it you said? Which leg should I break your leg? Or break your skull?" Ao Haiying shouted how Xiao Bei dared to touch him, and added that Xiao Bei even realized who was behind him. Xiao Bei raised his foot, replying that since the one continued to threaten, he deserved it. When Xiao Bei's boot almost touched Ao Haiying's face, the latter began to tearfully beg him to let go. Ao Haiying promised that if Xiao Bei let him go, he would give him the cookies. Xiao Bei lowered his foot next to Ao Haiying's face. Xiao Bei looked at Ao Haiying and calmly said, "You're not worth me breaking the rules at the cost of my life." He took the cookie from his hands and added that it was compensation for his time. Yānmiè, watching this, thought what an amazing guy Xiao Bei was after all. Those who watched the fight couldn't believe it. The rookie just like that. The rookie snatched a cookie from Ao Haiying and didn't even flinch. A humiliated Ao Haiying shouted to the entire hall, "You Xiao Bei, right? I remembered you." Immediately after the fight, Xiao Bei returned to his cell. He ate the cookies and thought that even if Ao Haiying decided to take revenge, he still wouldn't regret standing up for himself. At this point, the system sent a notification. The points ranking has been updated. Click on the forum panel to see the leaderboard. This was the first time Xiao Bei had heard of such a table, so he was surprised. Turns out the rankings are updated in real time. He found himself 276th out of 324 players. He wondered how many points first place had. Leafing upwards, he was increasingly surprised. The players above had 5,000 or more each. The first place was Zhao Shifang with 10,000 points. But the real shocker was that Ao Haiying was on the list of and came in third place. Thanks to the table, Xiao Bei recognized the name of the very bold type he had encountered. It was more serious than he had first thought. To find out more, he walked over to Zhang Ye's cell, knocked and asked if Zhang Ye was here. A voice came from inside. "Wait a bit, we're playing cards." Zhang Ye and Xiao Bei met and started discussing the fight. Zhang Ye said that he was glad Xiao Bei didn't get poisoned, because Ao Haiying could have done such a thing. He quickly looked around in case someone was eavesdropping. Then Zhang Ye recognized that Xiao Bei was now in grave danger. Ao Haiying would definitely take revenge and would definitely involve his brother, Ao Haijin. Xiao Bei remembered that Ao Haijin was third in the rankings and asked if he was really that strong. Zhang Ye nodded and said that yes, but far more terrifying was his power than his strength. He explained that the top players joined 3 teams to die less in advanced games and now stick together and sell overpriced cookies. Zhang Ye added that Zhao Shifang, Li Changsheng, and Ao Haijin were the captains of the 3 teams, and that without them, the rookies almost couldn't survive. He admitted that at first he wanted Xiao Bei to get his team together and get going, but now it has become too dangerous. If you can't save points, it's better to finish the game. Xiao Bei sadly lowered his head and fell silent. After a couple minutes, Zhang Ye said that he hadn't logged in yet and had to go, asking Xiao Bei to take care of himself and contact if anything. Xiao Bei wondered, if he became number 1, would there even be anyone who dared to touch him? It's been 3 days. The guys in the dorm saw him off. They whispered among themselves, how did this freshman score points so fast? Within a couple of days, Xiao Bei already had 2,000 points. One of the guys, a brown-haired man, muttered, even if he's that tough, it doesn't mean he'll make it to the end. In the past 2 days, Ao Haiying hadn't made contact once. Xiao Bei had noticed this, but was too busy to parry. To get pumped up that fast, he forced himself to go through 2 games a day. Because of this, he has already risen to 191st place in the rankings. Constant training in the simulation has pumped up his body a lot. Now he will be able to pass the main level without any problems. Still, one thing keeps him going. He still doesn't realize where he is. There is no sun, no way out. Day and night are just fake. In his situation, there's no choice. In addition to bedrooms and common areas, there's a fitness room and a bathhouse, but all of that is only available for points. On the 5th day, Xiaobei began to lose track of time. Only the endless game and growing points made him feel like he was even alive. He walked over to one of the rooms. If he remembered correctly, it was behind the mid-level arena. Walking up to the massive door, Xiaobei made up his mind and walked in. The system immediately scanned the player and then issued a clearance. Yu Xiaobei met the requirements to participate in the difficult level game, also called the intermediate level game. Only those with more than 2,000 points can enter. You get a whole 1,000 points for winning a game like this, even with 1 star. Xiaobei looked at the bracelet. The game had become more difficult, but it could be played as a team, which meant it would be faster. The system offered 2 options, either a team or random players. He could also invite his acquaintances. Seeing that it was possible to team up with friends for only 100 points, Xiaobei was slightly surprised. Xiaobei did not hesitate to click on the random coincidence label. The system immediately started picking a team and issued a notice. If he didn't make it into the designated room in time, he would be suspended from all games for the rest of the day. Without wasting a second, Xiaobei snapped out of his seat and ran to the 8th room. Once inside, he took a quick look around and muttered quietly, "This seems to be the place." His gaze immediately locked on the girl standing by the door. He was surprised. He hadn't expected there to be only 1 girl on the team. Hearing footsteps, the brunette turned around and looked at him. At this time, Ao Haijin was practicing in the gym, doing push-ups non-stop while Ao Haiying was nervously thrashing around nearby. Haiyin knew that his brother had been going through difficult games 2 days in a row, and touching him wasn't the best idea. But he couldn't tolerate it anymore. Xiaobei was really starting to overreact. When he couldn't stand it, he said, "Brother, let's take revenge on this insolent man together." Ao Haijin silently sat down on the bench. The guy with glasses immediately handed him a clean towel without waiting for a command. Wiping his face, Ao Haijin calmly said, "Haiyin, I know what you want. But do you really think he would dare to take my supplies?" Then his voice grew rougher, and his expression changed dramatically. "Looks like it's time to show this guy where he belongs." At this time, an awkward pause hung in the room between Xiaobei and the girl. Xiaobei was the first to speak. "Are you my partner? My name is Xiaobei." The girl didn't even look at him and offered to get in the game before it was too late. Xiaobei took off his hood and looked at her in surprise. Zhou replied that men and women live in different sectors, and they can only meet in intermediate and difficult games. She looked at Xiaobei. The guy looked like a rookie, and it was too obvious. Xiaobei confirmed his participation in the game, and then glanced at Zhou. Girls who survive in such conditions are definitely not the weak kind. Suddenly, a notification appeared on the screen. Player Jojo was launching the game. Just before loading up, she coldly tossed, "Just stay out of the way." All players were authenticated, and the system issued a command, "Login allowed." Xiaobei and Jojo found themselves in a spacious room with gray walls and dim light. In the corner of the room, they spotted their enemies, figures standing in the shadows. The system issued a task: defeat the puppeteer, who controls the puppets with thin threads. After a second, the puppeteer pulled a huge witch's hat over his head. Underneath it was a face, as if carved out of a Halloween pumpkin, and he stretched his arms right through the eye sockets. Jojo frowned as she looked at him. "This puppet?" The puppeteer abruptly pulled the strings, and 2 giant puppets emerged from behind his back, each with a huge knife in their hands. It seemed to Xiaobei that it was as if the puppeteer was gesturing for them to approach. Jojo calmly said, "As long as the game hasn't started, they won't touch us." System activated. Welcome to the game. The objective is to capture the puppeteer's props in 20 minutes. The reward is 1,000 points each. Hint: among the 2 puppets in the puppeteer's belt, only one is real. Choose the wrong one, and you get a random punishment. The countdown began. Xiaobei frowned. "How do you distinguish the right one?" Jojo replied, "Get to it first, then think." The countdown has been reset. Game on. Almost immediately, the puppeteer pulled the strings, and the 2 knife-wielding puppets tore at them. Xiaobei shouted, asking the girl to be careful as the puppets with weapons. Xiaobei froze. One of the puppets had grown right in front of him. She raised the knife sharply and swung it with force. At the last moment, Xiaobei managed to jump aside. The blade crashed into the floor with a clatter, bending the metal. Although Xiaobei managed to dodge, the blade still grazed his hand. The guy flinched as the knife was frighteningly sharp. It wasn't going the way he'd hoped. He dodged the puppet's every attack with all his might, feeling that if he missed once, it would be the end of him. The second puppet, armed with 2 knives, abruptly tore towards Jojo. The girl lifted her leg and gracefully leaned to the side, dodging. One of the knives caught her hair and sliced off the ends. Jojo frowned. She hadn't expected these things to be so fast. The puppet controlled by the puppeteer got into a fighting stance, displaying his knives in front of him. She abruptly stepped forward with her left foot and threw the knives straight in front of her, crouching down slightly. Jojo jumped back, doing a somersault in the air. Meanwhile, the second puppet didn't lag behind. It continued to attack Xiao Bei. But thanks to his quick reaction, he was able to dodge again, and the knife only crashed into the floor. Xiao Bei clenched his teeth. He realized that until he dealt with this puppet, he wouldn't be able to reach the puppeteer. He caught a glimpse of Jojo and saw her doing a backflip. Impressed, he thought. That's how cool she is. The puppeteer was laughing and twitching his fingers, controlling every movement of his puppets. The moment Jojo was doing a somersault and her head was down, she abruptly turned her body around. The puppet jumped up and hurled 2 blades in her direction. But Jojo was already on the floor, landing in a half-crouch, leaning on her left arm. The blades whizzed past. One knife struck right at her shoe, but it didn't even scratch her. She threw a cold, confident look at the doll. Xiao Bei saw her suddenly snap out of her seat and rush towards the puppeteer. He immediately realized Jojo had decided to seize the moment to grab the right doll. But as she ran closer, she abruptly froze. Both dolls were exactly the same, not a single distinguishing detail. It was pure random. Xiao Bei held his breath as he watched her. He hoped that she would guess correctly. But just as Jojo jumped towards the puppet to grab the puppet abruptly turned around, blocking her attempt. The system announced there were 16 minutes left in the match. The puppeteer was still as deft at controlling his puppets, turning them into deadly weapons. Xiao Bei flinched as he noticed Jojo effortlessly walking almost right up to the puppeteer. But the puppeteer himself didn't seem bothered at all. He didn't even try to put the puppets back on the defensive. Xiao Bei shouted loudly, warning his partner to be careful. He didn't know what the catch was, but he felt that it all looked too suspicious. Hearing Xiao Bei's voice, Jojo turned around and froze in surprise. In front of her, the puppet suddenly split into several pieces. And in the same instant, all of these parts snapped out of their seats and rushed after her at breakneck speed. Without wasting a second, Jojo dropped the sweatshirt she had previously kept on her waist. Jojo stopped and pulled her sweater forward, using it as a shield. The next instant, a sharp blade pierced the fabric. With a sharp movement, she threw her sweater back, pushing the puppet part away. At this time, Xiao Bei warned that puppets became much more dangerous after being separated. The torso of one of the puppets suddenly jumped into the air and tore at Jojo. The girl didn't have time to react and was hit hard on the arm. Xiao Bei anxiously asked if she was injured. Jojo dropped to one knee, clasping the wound and trying to catch her breath. The knife-wielding puppet began to wiggle her fingers, gripping the hilt tighter. Xiao Bei exhaled heavily. He realized that he would not be able to dodge such a blow from Jojo. The puppet's hand rose up and flew towards Jojo with great speed, ready to deliver a decisive blow. Jojo was breathing heavily. It was difficult to move, but she ducked down to dodge the attack. At this moment, Xiao Bei came to the rescue. He jumped up and kicked the puppet's shoulder with both feet. As he landed, he immediately kicked his foot once more, pushing his foe away. He looked at Jojo and asked if she could hold out further. The girl tried to stand up. She didn't want to give up. The timer showed 14 minutes left. Xiao Bei picked up Jojo and helped her up. The girl thanked him. She said that without his warning, she would have died by now. Xiao Bei replied so that she wouldn't misunderstand him. He has his own goals as well. The puppeteer himself is not that dangerous. But his puppets are different. They're too cunning. Since it's a two-person game, both of them must survive. Jojo can't lose. Suddenly, Jojo became wary. Instinctively, she sensed danger and turned around sharply. She shouted to Xiao Bei to be careful. The puppets threw several glued knives at them at a tremendous speed. Xiao Bei swerved to the side. One of the knives whizzed past, narrowly missing him. Jojo, seeing this, asked if he had a plan. Xiao Bei replied that he needed to cut the threads that connected the puppet to the puppeteer. To do this, he wanted to use the knife of the puppet itself. Jojo noticed that it wasn't that easy, but Xiao Bei had already thought of everything. He asked her to lure the puppet with 2 knives to her left. He was going to distract the puppet himself and then cut the thread at the right moment. They split up. Xiao Bei added that after that, they should immediately run to the puppet itself. The remaining puppets wouldn't bother them. Xiao Bei slowed down, stopping abruptly with one foot. The puppet in front of him waved his knife threateningly. At this time, Jojo led the second puppet to the left as they had agreed. Xiao Bei ran towards her. He shouted for her to freeze and not attack, Otherwise, the puppet would split again. Jojo stopped. Xiaobei was already very close by. All this time, Xiaobei was being chased by the second puppet. He stopped abruptly and jumped up, saying that it was up to them now. The boy nimbly jumped over the strings, swerved backward to avoid getting caught. The puppet, while aiming at Xiaobei, accidentally stabbed at the threads and cut them. Jojo, holding onto her injured arm, turned around to see if their tactics had worked. One puppet was no longer moving. The only one left was the other one, the one that was still fighting Xiaobei. They needed to get to the puppet immediately. Dodging the attacks, Xiaobei began to get closer to the puppeteer. He leaned back sharply, turned around, and reached his hand toward the puppet attached to the puppeteer's belt. But at that moment, the thread recovered. The puppet abruptly rose up and pierced Xiaobei's shoulder with a sharp knife. Despite the pain, Jojo wasted no time. She rushed forward, reached the puppeteer, and was right behind him. Hearing footsteps behind him, the puppeteer turned around sharply. Xiaobei, out of his last strength, grabbed the puppet's hand. With a trembling hand holding her down, he shouted, "Hurry up!" Jojo rushed forward, trying to grab the puppet in time. But at the same moment, the second puppet turned towards the puppeteer. She sighed heavily and reached for her belt. In an instant, snatched up one of the dolls. Immediately, the system activated and announced, "The player who took prop B must remain in place. Otherwise, the device will explode." But then another message rang out. Player Jojo took the wrong item. As punishment, the doll is about to explode. The system instantly presented Xiaobei with a choice. The first option is to continue the game, choose the right props, save the team, and get the reward. But if he makes a mistake, there will be an explosion. The second option allowed Xiaobei to simply leave the game room. No risk, but also no reward. No points, no victory. Xiaobei wondered, would the players be penalized if they chose the wrong item? Especially since Jojo's life depended on his decision. It was impossible to make a mistake. Jojo was nervous. She tried to remove the doll, but nothing came out. The system informed her, "Wait for your partner to make a choice." Xiaobei understood. Leaving without a single point would be a serious blow. But was it worth risking your life for 1,000 points? At least now he knows exactly which doll is the right one. He won't miss next time. But there was a problem. The marionette's threads regenerate too quickly. It was dangerous to rely on them alone. If they lose, they blow up. Although it's more likely that this puppet is just out of control than actually exploding. Xiaobei was worried about Jojo. He himself was not in top form right now, which meant that there would still be a chance to score points in the future. He touched the bracelet, intending to end the game. At this moment, Jojo looked at him hopefully. Everything depended on Xiaobei. She didn't want to miss the chance for points. Jojo anxiously told Xiaobei to wait, assuring him that she had a rare bonus card, and if he didn't go out of his way to help her, she would give it to him in exchange. Jojo quickly explained. She had already used hidden bonuses in previous games. If Xiaobei decided to stay, this card would help him pass more difficult levels. She opened a tab on her bracelet and revealed, "With this card, you can access to buy weapons." Xiaobei hesitated for a moment. The bonus looked really cool, and he knew that Jojo wasn't lying. He himself had a similar hidden double-point bonus in the previous game. He said if he stayed, he might blow up with her, and no card would be worth it. Jojo didn't give up. "If you stay, ask for anything." Xiaobei pointed a finger at her. "I don't just want the map. Give me another 500 points. In a serious tone, he added, "If you don't give it all back after the game, you'll regret it. Badly." Jojo nodded. "I agree. Everything will be yours if you stay." Then she talked about the plan. She suggested that I take the knife first and then cut the strings. Xiaobei thought for a moment, but quickly agreed. He said that this time they would be cutting not just the strings, but the very hand of the puppeteer. Xiaobei noticed that the threads controlling the puppets came directly from the puppeteer's fingers like nerves. If the source wasn't removed, they would regenerate again and again. Jojo quickly said that if the puppeteer's arm was cut off, the puppet would lose its ability to attack. She added that her life was on the line, and she would do anything to win. Without further ado, Xiaobei pressed on the bracelet. "Continue the game." Instantly, the system reported that the game was starting. But this time, the time was limited. Only 3 minutes. If they didn't make it in time, the place would explode. Jojo felt anxious, but Xiaobei cheered her up. He continued, "The puppets have changed tactics. Now it will be hard to dodge if they go on the attack. Last round, the puppets attacked immediately, but now they are defending the puppeteer." Xiaobei realized that the puppets wanted to trap them. Suddenly, Jojo asked, "What will we do if we can't cut off the arm?" Xiaobei looked at the torch and offered to set the puppet on fire. He immediately added, "Let's do it this way. You take the torch and I'll check the puppet. If it doesn't work, you take the knife and I'll do the rest." Xiaobei looked at his heart rate. It was equal to 161 beats per minute. Xiaobei desperately tried to get away from the puppet with the knife. He knew that if the puppeteer suspected for even a second that Jojo was up to something, he would immediately start defending himself. My shoulder ached wildly, but there was no retreating. Xiaobei jumped towards the puppet and slammed his knee right into its body. The impact was powerful, and the torso flew off the legs. At this moment, his heart rate jumped sharply to 161. The skill was activated. Images flashed through his mind. 3 attacks in the next 5 seconds. He saw each of them. Puppet's arm strike, tilt the body backwards, torso kick, another tilt. Kick, he's through. It's all synchronized, it's all fast. But Xiaobei reacted to everything. One of the blows almost hit the control thread. Almost hit it. Almost. But it wasn't over. Another hand with a knife swung over his head. Xiaobei shouted to Jojo to go straight to him as soon as she found the torch.